Welcome to the Dr. Joe Show, where we learn about women's health and sexual wellness. Our guest today is Jasmine Ridlee. Jasmine, thanks so much for joining us and for sharing your wisdom. How have you been lately?
I've been really good. I recently just moved, like a really big move, and so I'm still getting used to a new life in a new part of the world. This is something completely new to me. The area is very different, so um, going through a transition, but mentally I'm just in a whole different place, so I feel really good. I'm good.
All right, well, good. So again, you moved, I believe, from Tennessee to Arizona, correct? Or were you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, good. And how long have you been there in Arizona?
It's been about coming up on 7 months.
Okay,
The time
so
went by really fast.
yeah, I'm sure it does. Yeah, and it's interesting when you go to somewhere new that that people have different customs and that type of thing, so and all of that. But wanted to talk to you today about get some wisdom for these younger women in college. And I know I have talked about this before, and I have had the honor of having you in my class, and so enjoyed that very much, and then enjoyed post class as well, because you've had a lot of wisdom that you've shared over the years. What were your college years like, as far as looking back on it for you?
I had a very full, I had a very almost when you see a movie and you see how people have their college lives, I was that person. So I had a lot of experiences. I was very involved. I've always been a very flamboyant person. So I've always just been very out there. Social butterfly, talk to anybody. And so I did a lot in undergrad. As far as dating in undergrad, I I actually only dated about two guys, but I was with one guy for the majority of the time I was in undergrad.
Did that go well?
It started well. It did not end too great. We don't speak anymore. In the beginning, he was very kind. He was a gentleman. Um, and as time went on, it was I call it what it is. There was a lot of mental abuse.
Hmm.
And so it started small. Looking back, I now see what he did. It was almost like a strategy. I don't know if he knew he was doing it, but he would start with small things. He would be a couple minutes late to a date. He wouldn't tell me he was running late, and then it would go from that to he'd be hours late or just not even show up, not tell me he didn't see a problem with it. Then it became, he got to the point where he would tell me that nobody else liked me, nobody else was going to love me. So there was a lot of emotional abuse going on behind closed doors.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so there towards the end, it was just a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs. So that did not end well. We don't speak anymore.
Okay, so I'm sorry to hear that, but do you think that experience is fairly common amongst, well, both, I guess, both males and females at college, but especially females?
I do feel like that. I've spoken with a lot of my female friends, and I feel like we all have that one story at least, and it's always so extreme. It's never just I had a bad ex and we broke up. It's always an extreme. I stayed with, went through all of this heartache over and over again, and for nothing.
So,
Not for nothing.
what were your thoughts after you had a chance to kind of get back away from it and analyze it? Is there anything that you would have done different if you were a college woman now and having the same situation come upon you?
So when I wasn't undergrad dealing with the situation, when I had the time to step back then, I think, like I said, I was in a different space mentally.
Mm.
And so I didn't really know how to love myself. And so I kept trying to justify what he was doing and making excuses when I backed away. But now, as an adult, and I back away from the situation, I wish I could tell my younger self, stop going back. Nothing is going to change. And what you're seeking in him, you're just seeking that in yourself, really. So just what you're looking for him, find it in yourself. Give yourself whatever it is that you think he's giving you, and you won't even need him anymore.
Gotcha.
Because there's nothing coming from that relationship. And so I wish I could just tell myself, don't do it, girl.
So in other words, you're self-sufficient if you just realize that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
How many of your
Oh,
how many of your girlfriends do you think went through the same thing? Was it a majority or
I would say about 90%.
okay? Do you think that that is a kind of a characteristic of just this particular time that we're going through in history, or do you think it's always been that way as far as,
I
you know?
think I would like to think that it's a my generation or a newer concept that's happening, but I don't. I think it's always been like that. I think that maybe I just didn't see it because I was younger and I didn't notice it. And by the time I got old enough to understand it, it had all kind of blown past. But as an adult now, and I talk to people of all ages, and I hear, and I'm like, oh, this has been happening. This is not just us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So do you think that so we're kind of talking about a bit of the hookup culture, I guess. So do you think that, looking at the situation now and being the age that you are now, do you think that there can be anything done about the hookup culture? Because what I hear you saying is that it wasn't the best experience for you as far as, the way it came out. Although I remember you said that you had two major relationships, and so you didn't probably participate in the typical hookup culture type thing. But do you think that that contributes the hookup culture contributes to guys acting the way they do, as far as as you said, it started off real positive, but then little things started coming up, and little disrespect, and then a little bit more disrespect, that type of thing. Do you think that climate that we're going through right now it contributes to that?
I do think so, because it's so with the hookup culture, it is so easy to go out somewhere or to get on an app on your phone and call a random person or text a random person or somebody or whatever, and just set something up, a little rendezvous. And so when things get hard, you don't feel like working because that's work, and we're lazy. We don't seem to want to put in any work now. And why should we? I guess when at the touch of a button, what you want is right there. And
Yeah.
so I think all of it plays into each other, and it's a vicious, nasty circle. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I kind of just observed that from you ladies. We had the women's class back when you were there, and um, it was pretty heartbreaking to watch a lot of it. And it seemed to me to be very common with the ones that shared, which a lot of them did. So I guess that's why we're where I'm at now, to
Mhm.
try to bring the experience of women like yourself to the younger ones, to maybe encourage them to take the pathway that you described earlier, as far as finding what you need in yourself, and then being that person, and then being able to go out and I suppose not be in a situation where you allow people to treat you not the way they should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I found, after my relationship, my longer relationship that wasn't really too healthy, I got into another relationship that was shorter, a lot shorter, wasn't that healthy either. And then I spent a lot of time by myself, and I have a lot of people still ask me because I'm still single, and some people will ask me, like, doesn't that bother you? Everybody's in a relationship, and sometimes it does. But being by myself, I've realized that in the past for me, and I seem to see it in a lot of younger women, when you haven't fully become comfortable with yourself and you're still walking around with the insecurity of, am I good enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I small enough? All these insecurities of the world that the media kind of force on us. But all these insecurities we walk around with, we don't love ourselves for what we are. And then the way we cope with that is that we seem to go out and find a relationship with somebody so they can validate all of the things that we question about ourselves. And so we keep ourselves in these relationships because we think that this person essentially is, making us a better person, because they seem to be validating all the things that we're looking for in ourselves.
Mhm.
But essentially that's not what's happening though. It's really just it's a scapegoat. You're not really taking responsibility. You're not learning how to love yourself. You're avoiding the whole thing. And so I learned that when I took a step back and did take the time to be by myself, I learned who I was. I could be. I dated myself. I did. That's what it was. I dated myself. I really did take myself on dates. I still do it. I take myself on dates. I do take the time in the morning, and this is just a love yourself tip, I guess. But I take the time in the morning to ask myself, like, how are you doing? The same way that when we're in these relationships, we get to know another person,
Mhm.
we have to do it ourselves first.
Right.
So I think that's where people mess up. They go into these relationships looking for the other half, but you should already know yourself enough. You're looking for something in somebody else, but you should know you first.
Mhm.
Then you can get to know somebody else.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree, and that's very wise. You have to you have to get that wholeness, I guess, and get to know yourself, and kind of, as you said, go into those dark corners sometimes that we have where, oh, I don't like this about myself, or I don't like that about myself, or I need to be uh, affirmed on this situation by somebody else. And yeah, it puts you especially I think in hookup culture, it puts you in a weak, maybe weak isn't the right word for it, maybe a vulnerable
Yeah.
situation where, and it seems like in hookup culture that being vulnerable is what you don't want to be, as far as like you said. um I hadn't thought about that way before, but if it's so easy, especially for a guy, and guys have less of a tendency to bond, as far at least most of them readily, like women do. But if he has the option of getting on his phone and jumping on Tinder and having 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever other choices of
Yeah.
women to switch to, it's got to create a situation that's putting more pressure, on the women that he's got a relationship with now. Yeah. I mean, looking back on my dating days, if something happened between you and your steady, it would be a matter of having to go find, somebody else, and probably at least weeks, maybe months,
Yeah.
maybe a year, so finding somebody. So yeah, I had not thought about those repercussions. The would you say the social media situation has been a helpful or a hurting situation on relationships?
Definitely hurtful. I think a lot of people forget that social media is not reality. Um, Everybody has a tendency to, on their social media, only showcase the great, wonderful things that are happening in their lives. They're not telling you what's happening behind closed doors. And so we have this warped perception of, what our realities are supposed to look like. And we think that we have to be perfect and we have to be up to a certain standard because this person,
Mhm.
her boyfriend, do this or that, or they look like this and they get to go here. And, so we have this really messed up perception how things are supposed to look in a relationship. And so it people look at social media and they want what the other person has, what they see these people have, but they don't know what's going into that relationship at all.
Right. Everything's been edited on social media, and you don't get the reality, I'm sure, of
For instance, I'm just saying it's very relevant right now. The Quavo and Saweetie, I don't know that girl's name. Rappers, everybody thought they were this cute power couple. And now that they're split up, they're seeing all these things that were actually happening behind closed doors, like potential, or alleged domestic violence and all this other stuff and infidelity. And everyone is so shocked. And I'm like, you guys, you just didn't see the whole picture. They never posted this stuff.
right.
Just post the good.
Right. And people don't stop and think about that. I think especially like younger ones, like middle schoolers and ones that are just coming onto it. If their parents are letting them, get on at that age,
Mhm.
I'm sure it's a very disillusioning and maybe even depressing, type of experience to
Mhm.
as time goes along. So, there's always been the kind of the mean girls at the school or whatever, and you had to put up with it when you're at school, but at least in the earlier years, you got to get away from it. But now it's kind of,
It's everywhere.
yeah, all around you. What are you doing these days as far as what's keeping you going and where are you focusing your time?
Like I said, I'm in a transitional period right
Mm.
now.
Uh-huh.
Um, Career wise, I've actually been really questioning. I've been questioning my career choices lately. I've always worked with kids. I love kids. They're my passion. But lately, I've not the steps that I've been trying to excel in my career. And so I've been doing a lot of things to build up my resume and investing in my skill set and
Mm.
just always expanding and networking and doing what I think is the next best thing. And it just kind of seems to be at a I don't know, just a stopping point right now or a
Mhm.
pause. I don't want to say a stopping point, but I just kind of I'm still right now. And so I'm wondering if this is what I'm comfortable doing because I've just done it my whole life, or is this really my passion of what I'm supposed to be doing?
Right.
I don't know if everybody goes through that, but I'm like, this is confusing because I love what I do. And so right now I'm actually a preschool teacher. I absolutely love it. I love children. Um, but I've been here in this place and I've just been trying to get myself together. I'm learning to love myself. I'm going through this process of loving me. And so that honestly is what keeps me going. Just this journey of dating myself. It's really interesting. I love like finding out new things about myself. And it is a real relationship. And so I'm legitimately, I'm like eager to see like, oh, what happens next? Like what's going to happen next for me? So
I got
I'm
it.
just doing the next right thing.
Yeah.
I'm just taking it one task at a time, the next right thing, wherever. I've always been a very free spirit. So I'm like, whatever the universe provides or where the wind tells me to go next is the next thing I'm going to do. And we'll just see what happens.
I got it. Yeah. Well, you have always been a free spirit and a free thinker but a free thinker that has a good heart and has a good intent with the things that you do, So that's important. I think there's some free thinkers that free think themselves right into a lot of trouble and into unwise places. But you're not that way. You're a wise free thinker. And I think, I think your instincts about children, you being good with children, I think they're correct. So it's just kind of if that's where your comfort and your passion lies, then it's just kind of figuring out which segment of society would fit you best as far as like you said, preschool, or would it be being a teacher for at a elementary school, or I'm sure there's a bunch of other options for that as well.
Oh, yeah. I've
But
been looking into the nannying option. And so reached out to a lot of nanny agencies using my resources.
you got something just popped on my screen here. uh so I can't see you at the moment, but hopefully you can still see me. I'm gonna
I can see you.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it was a VPN thing popped on the screen. So anyway, back, I can see you again. So if you were, well, again, these little girls and boys that you're working with now, where do you think that maybe starting to talk to these kids about some of the stuff that's up ahead of them would be wise? I mean, obviously they're too young for, a lot of sexual talk and that type of thing, but
Yeah.
what do you think would be a good path going into the future to see this change? Because I'm interested in seeing it change, and then be better. Go ahead.
I think it actually is not even about the teaching fully of sex. I think we have to, I'm a very different thinker, okay? So just follow me. So I think that when we raise our kids up, one, we have to teach them to love themselves. A lot of people raise kids the way that they were raised, even if it's not right, because that's how they were raised. And
Mhm.
they are fully, aware and they're just choosing, I'm going to continue this because this is what I had. I think that we have to teach our kids love. We have to listen to our kids because remember, although it's not a big problem to us because we have big adult problems, there that is their world. That is the big problem or whatever's going on. So like we have to listen. We have to love them because that's how they learn to love. And then when they get of the age, I do think that we should talk to kids fairly early about sex because I've heard third graders talking about sex.
Really?
And I volunteer with several different agencies throughout my lifetime, and I typically work with younger kids, and I have had third graders talking to me about oral sex. Um, and so I know that they know it's out there, and the fact that parents are now giving their kids these phones and they have access to whatever is on the internet. They
Mhm.
stumble across stuff sometimes. Sometimes they see it in videos or whatever they see it in, but they've seen it and they know.
Yeah.
I do think that we should be talking to kids, not about, I mean, you don't have to give them the whole nine description or anything like that, but about fifth grade or and at least by sixth grade, I think that we need to be talking to children
Mhm.
about sex. As they get older, you add more, you make it age appropriate, developmentally, appropriate for where they're at in age. But as you get older, I think that we also have to tell kids about the other part of sex.
Mhm.
People talk about sex with their kids and they only talk about the physical of condoms, contraceptives, the actual penetration, but they don't talk about the emotional side of sex. And
Right.
because that is a bond, create a bond with somebody when you do that, no matter who that person is, there's a bond created.
Mm.
And so when people say, like you're giving a piece of yourself away every time, that is kind of what that's like. You're bonding with somebody. And so you have to protect your energy. Okay. You do
Yeah.
not want everybody attaching their energy to your energy. And so we have to teach kids the full spectrum of sex, not just the act, but the whole thing.
Mhm.
There's more to it.
Yeah, well, and also I would say that the emotional aspect is probably the most important of all, and you're right, that's what gets left out, I mean, it is
Mhm.
especially in sex ed, so to speak, they don't they need to top it off and really probably emphasize, as the girls and boys and then teenagers become older, they need to, I guess, emphasize that the pinnacle, the height of sex is having a relationship where you have those emotional bonds that are, hopefully in one case with another person that's going to be lifelong, so building towards that is the ideal thing to do. And my personal bias is, we don't promote, long term relationships or marriage enough, and help kids to see that there's huge advantages to that. And
Mhm.
the boys are hard to talk to in the teenage years because they've got so much testosterone and so much sex drive. But the women and the girls and the women, if they could be brought back to, your philosophy of, hey, I'm gonna make sure that I'm good with myself. I'm gonna date myself, which I think is a great and brilliant idea. And I'm going to, learn how that relationship works with just myself, and then
Mhm.
have the um, the fortitude, when I am dating or whatever, to just be okay, without, if this, I can take this guy or leave him, and I can let him know that I want to have sex under certain conditions, not just randomly and that type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, no, I totally agree, and I wish that more young women had the well, both males and females, but again, having been a teenage guy, I know I know that it's hard. It's a difficult case to make with them at that age, but with
Well, I think now we're seeing more of the girls starting to, because of how the dating scene is now. Now we're seeing more women start to treat relationships like, you know, I don't need it.
expendable.
That nobody values relationships anymore.
Yeah,
Not the way that they used to.
that's sad. Do you think that they really are that way, or do you think deep down inside it might be a self-protective mechanism?
I think that deep down inside, we all just want somebody to love us and love us the right way. But I think that we're taught, don't be vulnerable, people. That's weak. Showing emotions is weak. Don't don't give people too much information about your life. I think that people just don't want to be open. And then you do have the people that are willing to be open, but we don't put in the work the same way that we used to. But even in our society now, marriage isn't portrayed the same way it used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at television shows, even like the 1960s,
Mm.
they television shows then they had couples, they had married couples. There was a wife, and it typically was, the traditional roles. She was probably a housewife, but they had the families, and even honestly, I remember growing up watching TV shows, and it was more families, and now we have all these shows about divorced ex-wives of basketball players. And so like they make it fabulous to have a failed relationship.
Right. They're putting the kind of role models out there that are um not really probably the most positive role models, and giving the kids not a good I guess you'd say idea of what a good goal would be, because that's, like you said, those older shows kind of gave a picture of a goal, a goal that everybody kind of gets on the track for. And personally, I think, us humans were, well, we've become very we're benefited very much by having, like you said, somebody that loves us and we love them back, and
Absolutely.
and everybody's got a person that has their back all the time, and you have the other person's back, and you have children together. In most cases, you work hard to take care of them and help them to grow up and be good people, and it's a very positive cycle. But the other cycle is there's a whole lot of, like you said earlier, heartache and negativity, I think, to it. And again, especially I think on the women's end of it, because I think the women have naturally have more desire to bond and to create that home, create that and the kind of nesting, instinct that they have. But not all of them, like you said, and there may be more that are kind of going another direction, that are feeling like they need to do that because society is telling them to do it, or like you said earlier, they're feel very vulnerable, and they're going to do that so they don't get hurt. Probably been hurt many times before. So um let me ask you one other thing. Well, the other thing I wanted to mention was, we also have young girls, that because of a lot of different factors, the chemicals in our environment, the way the food supply is, and the way this social climate is that you described, they're getting their periods like really, really young, like 9, 8, 9, and
Mhm.
that that makes sex ed probably, like you
Oh
said,
yeah.
back to about third grade is where they're getting maybe they're getting their period, starting at
Oh yeah.
that age. So, and that also puts a long period of time between then and what the average age of getting married is these days, 20, 28, no, 27, I think, for females and 29 for males. So that's a long time to go, without having, when you have those sex drives, without.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a recipe for disaster. It looks like, as far as.
Yeah, it's like sometimes the parents are trying to shield it. They think they're protecting the kids, but they're curious and they know that they can ask their friends because of course when you're a kid your friends know everything. So
Right.
they're asking their same age friends who also know nothing about sex, what is sex? Well, like, I'm having these urges, what do I do? And they are telling me like each other horrible advice and they're taking it as truth.
Right. Yeah. Especially, can you imagine a fifth grader, fourth, fifth, sixth grader giving each other advice? Well, uh, is there anything that I haven't asked you, or anything we haven't talked about, that you think is important to relate to these college age women?
One, love yourself. Because at the end of the day, everything boils back down to, do I love myself? I did not love myself. I used to tolerate.
Got you back.
Got me back? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't love myself at one point, so I used to tolerate a lot of disrespect from people. And that's just even outside of intimate relationships. Love yourself. It is just the key to success. And then secondly, do not continue making a mistake because you have spent time in it. And I know that sounds kind of evil, but I hear a lot of people say, I stayed with him because we had already been together for a year, or we had already done this for 3 or 4 years, and I figured we should keep giving it a try. Sis, if he has not changed in 3 years, one more year is not going to make a difference. Peace out. Run. It is
Right.
okay. And that's why self love is good, because in situations like that, you say, I love myself. I know that I deserve better. It's not that I dislike you or that I hate you. I just love me. And maybe one day when you get it together, we can revisit this maybe. But I love me and I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
So I hate hearing girls say that they stayed because they invested time already. It's okay to say enough is enough. You have to, at some point, you do have to put your foot down and say no more.
Yeah, and you're worth
Men will
it.
only treat you the way that you let them.
Right. That's such a good lesson, but it's so hard for these girls and young women these days, I think, younger than yourself. And I think it's only gotten harder because, like we said, of the internet and social media and that type of thing, because it just like it merchandises, young women, and it's like, I got to merchandise myself, and I gotta be successful, and the
Yeah.
competition. So
I was gonna say life is a big competition now.
yeah, and more than ever, I think it's always been somewhat of a competition, but in.
But now it's like if you don't have the most followers, these young people truly think that their value is, based off of a number.
Right. Yeah, and that's sad. That's sad too, and it's hard to anticipate. We couldn't have. I'll speak for myself. I didn't anticipate this. The way it's developed, and this won't last forever. It'll be something else. In another 5 to 10 years. I can't anticipate that right now, but it's unfortunately seemed to have gotten worse. I mean, it's gotten more difficult. For young people to live in the environment. So I'm hoping that at some point we have a change in direction. I guess that's what I'm personally working on, so.
I like to be. I do notice a lot of companies now are trying to be more inclusive in their advertisements. They're trying to really promote like real reality, not like the fake reality. And so I've been noticing some stuff on social media. A couple, companies running some campaigns to help out the young kids, and show them, hey, we don't all look like this. We don't. It's different for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. That reality is good. And it's so reassuring to them as far as I don't have to be perfect like I see all these other examples of. So, but it's been a great conversation, Jasmine, and I've missed talking to you. I missed your wisdom, and I you've shared a lot today, and I know it will be helpful to a number of young women that haven't gone as far down the road as you have. So thank you very much,
Thank you.
and we will stay in touch. All right,
We will. Yes, sir.
all right. Thank you,
All
and
right. Thank you.
all right. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. I will. You do the same.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.